Come on, 2, 3.
Well, good morning. Welcome back to the broadcast, Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN Weekly for Saturday, December 4th, 2021. And our top story today, ongoing labor woes in the construction industry. Well, joining me now to discuss this and a lot more is Doug Ford with the Curtis Lumber Company. Doug, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, we're going to talk about construction and some of the labor woes, but let me ask you this: we've seen housing prices significantly appreciate over the course of this pandemic, actually kind of mirroring what we saw in 2008. Not saying it's the same outcome, but they've really gone up, and especially here in the Charlotte area, homes are going through the roof here. But new construction doesn't seem to follow the same parallel track, and it seems like there's been a challenge in producing new homes. I want to get your thoughts about this and how this might tie into some of the labor woes out there.
So you're exactly spot on. The challenge right now with construction is the lack of labor. And this is not something new. This is something that's been happening over several years. It's just right now it's getting a lot of attention because of some of the other factors that are influencing construction, the supply chain problems that we're currently having. So it's really highlighted some of the issues, but the labor piece of it, that's been ongoing for several years, and there's a lot of things that are contributing to that. But the biggest thing is students, young people are not made aware of the opportunities in the trades, and they're just not, they don't know what they don't know. When I've had the opportunity to get in front of them and help them understand the opportunities, the light bulb goes off, and there's an interest. But it's a big challenge right now.
Yeah, so let's unpack this a little bit. I want to get into the program that you and the Workforce Development Initiative are doing, but just back to the labor shortage. Is it and these are skilled workers? I mean, these are just not day laborers. These are people who are plumbers. These are people who are iron workers. These are people that build homes and do all the important work to build those homes. Is it a function of people don't want to do the work? Is it a function of wages? How does this kind of fall out?
So that's a great question. There's a lot of misconceptions about the trades, and I think it goes back to several years ago. It was very different back then. It wasn't safe. It was a lot of hard work. They didn't have all the tools that they currently have. Today, it's a whole different world. But those misconceptions still exist. People, when you talk to them, they think about, when you talk about the trades, they're thinking about the elements and the safety, factor and low pay. That has all gone away over the last few years, and it's a very, safe environment to be working in. The conditions are, they're regulated, so you're not put into unsafe conditions. So things have improved dramatically, but people don't know that. And one of the challenges that we have is talking to parents. When we're talking to students about getting into the trades, the parents say, "Oh no, that's not for you. You shouldn't be doing that." And then all these misconceptions come up based on what they knew from when they were, in the workforce.
Yeah, and those things create a lot of headwinds, and if you have preconceived biases, it's really hard to unlock new information. Let's talk a little bit about this task force that you're a part of. What is the task force, and what are you tasked with doing?
So going back again a few years ago, I'm part of the Saratoga Builders Association, upstate New York. And, it's a organization that is for builders, and I sit on their board. And every board meeting, we would have the same discussion. I could build more homes if I had the labor. And we would debate this every single board meeting. And finally, I said one board meeting, look, we either need to start doing something about this or we need to table it, because we're wasting a half an hour every meeting complaining about the lack of labor. So with that comment, I immediately got appointed to a task force. And from there, we started trying to identify what's the best course of action. And we all agreed that, working with schools and making young people aware of the opportunities in the trades, that would be our first initiative. And we started there, and we were having a lot of success, talking to the administrators and the superintendents, and they were extremely welcoming for us to come in. When we started talking with guidance counselors, we started getting a little more resistance because from their perspective, they're gated or graded on how many students go on to a 4-year school or a 2-year school. And that's not to say that we're against that, because we're absolutely not, but we just want to make sure that all the paths are available to students. And that could mean, getting into the trades right out of high school or through a 2-year program. So that's kind of where we started, and we've been building on that ever since.
And look, I think kids today need to have, and the parents, by the way, because a lot of times they are guiding their children, or they should be guiding their children, but they need to have all the options presented to him. And a 4-year school may not be appropriate for every child. Maybe they have a different skill set. Maybe they are more inclined towards using their hands or using their math skills to figure out the right angle at which to build an arch. I have no skill at all in that, but all those options need to be available. And by the way, a 2-year community college is also a good option. So presenting kids with these options only helps them make the best decision for them, because you don't want to go off to a 4-year school and then find out you don't want to sit in an office and you don't want to be an accountant. I mean, that is a lot of money and a lot of effort put forth towards something that may not pay off.
So you're absolutely correct. And the other thing that happens in the schools is, they have a student that is, high academically, achieves high grades. He is automatically destined for college. They don't even consider him or even make the trades an option for that student. And that's not correct either. So, again, we've had a lot of success talking with the schools. We started locally in the county here, and now it's become a statewide initiative. We've got we have a lobbyist that's on our committee that has helped us reach, the right legislators to start to, work with the schools to, make the trades an option and make the students understand that they're not anything less by going into a trade than they are going into a 4-year school. And that's the other thing. The trades are looked down upon, or have been in the past. I think that's turning. COVID has actually helped us, because with the remote learning, some students are resistant to that, and parents are resistant to sending their kids off to some school 100 miles away or wherever. So I think it's forced parents to really look at some other pathways for their children, and I think it's helped us.
Absolutely. And look, there's nothing wrong with being great with your hands, great with your mind, putting the two together. Have you seen, you talk about doing things in New York State. Have you seen, for example, the AFL-CIO and other building trades kind of nationally pick up on this? And maybe this is something that you can see across 50 states as opposed to just your state, which I know you're interested in your state, but this sounds like something that would be of interest. I kind of put this in the same category of financial literacy and some of the other key things that you need to know about when you're in middle school, high school, and progressing through the education system.
Yeah, so it actually is a nationwide initiative right now. It's not just a New York problem. All states are suffering from lack of labor in the trades. So again, it's we're building momentum. I think it's finally getting the attention that it needed. When you go out and you need to hire a plumber for your home, and you have to wait 3 weeks to get a plumber, and when you do finally get one and you see what you have to pay them, I think people are waking up to the fact that there's a gap here.
Absolutely. Well, Doug, it's a pleasure chatting with you. Thanks so much for chatting about this, and we look forward to having you back on the program again very soon.
Well, thank you. We appreciate the opportunity to talk about this situation, and look forward to talking to you again.
Thanks, Doug. And when we come back, we'll take a look at some of our best segments for the week. You're going to want to stick around right here on BRN Weekly. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms? Especially for the smaller businesses. I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Are you stuck with a low credit score? A credit report and score that's causing you to be denied credit or pay higher interest rates than others for the same things? Then do what Terrence did and call Credit Repaired for your free credit evaluation to help restore your credit.
I started thinking about buying a new house, and my score wasn't where I needed it to be. I called and spoke with one of the representatives, and we just had a good conversation, and I liked what he was saying.
Just one call for his free credit evaluation was all it took to start back on the track to repairing his credit.
I'm seeing the deletions and I'm getting the report, so I know something's being done. It does make a difference to me.
All it takes is one call to get started.
Credit Repair has given me a second chance to have a better credit score.
Don't let a low credit score hold you back another day. Do what Terrence did and make the call for your free credit evaluation.
Call 800-819-4152. That's 800-819-4152. Again, 800-819-4152.
Welcome back. On Monday, we discussed using tweets to score publicly traded companies. Let's take a look.
So the S&P 500 is the premier equity benchmark in the U.S., reflecting large cap stocks, and it's benchmark. Trillions of dollars are benchmarked to it and track it as an investment vehicle. As the name implies, it has 500 stocks. It's quite venerable. It's been around in its present form for well over 50 years. And so oftentimes when our firm is looking at new innovative products, we use the S&P 500 as a starting point.
Let's just talk about the finance conversation first, because I think that's a good starting spot. So you have this incredibly robust conversation on the platform. So you're seeing 26% growth in conversation in 2020. In 2021, it's one of the top 3 growing conversation trends on Twitter. And that's really because of the audience that we have. So you have world leaders that come and announce public policy. You have CEOs that share information about their companies. You have journalists that break information 24/7. And then you have market experts and individual investors that really respond and understand those conversations and have a community that they engage with. And so that's really where S&P comes in. They leverage Twitter's developer platform. They consume that conversation, and they have some really sophisticated text analytics and additional tools with big data that helps understand the mood of the crowd, helps understand the sentiment, and helps understand the companies that are tweeted about in the most positive way. And then they build an index that reflects that conversation.
Well, so first of all, we are firewalled off from the ratings organization. So their data is their data, our data is our data. And so those are completely independent activities. What we do is basically ingest Twitter data through feeds that they have. And then we first sift the tweets that are associated with particular company stocks and that there's an indicator on tweets whether a tweet is meant to be about a company stock or not. That's referred to as a cash tag that we can talk a little bit more about. And basically, we look for the tweets that are the most relevant. So we try to filter out the quote unquote spam, and we get kind of a reduced set of tweets that we consider to be the most representative tweets, if you will. And we then score them using some of the tools that Jared was alluding to. And we score all of the stocks in the 500 on a daily basis for a month period. We then take a look at the average of those scores over that month. We weight the more recent scores slightly higher. And then we do a ranking of those stocks. And the highest ranked stocks, depending on, we have two indices, one that picks 50 and one that picks 200 names, depending on the number you're picking, you essentially sort that list and pick the highest ranking stocks. And then for the next month, that's the index. And then at the end of that month, the sentiment that we gathered for that month is then reconsidered, and so on and so on and so on. So you're basically looking at sentiment for a month, have an index on those stocks for a month, and it keeps going continuously like that.
Not all of us understand what an API is, how businesses communicate with each other. I think it might be helpful if I give a little backstory and a little bit of the history of Twitter and our developer community. So Twitter was started in 2006. It was a really simple text-based social community and messaging platform. And what started really simple as this text-based platform was enhanced by this vibrant and really creative developer community. So they looked at what was available through the core Twitter offering. And they said, well, I'd love to have things like pictures. I'd like to have like a more rich media experience. They created things like the reply and the retweet. Even the original iPhone app that you use was created by a developer who programmatically connected with Twitter to create this solution. So that was like our history with developers. There's been this really exciting way in which users looked at the features available from Twitter and then enhanced that platform and said, I'd love to build new features or new solutions for new communities that aren't being served. At the same time, we have this developer platform that provides access to Twitter data at scale. So when you think about the hundreds of millions of conversations that happen on Twitter every day, it's impossible for any business to sift through those and understand what's going on all across the world 24/7. So we provide access to these conversations to businesses like S&P 500 that then really take the sophisticated data analytics and machine learning and AI to understand and analyze that conversation and then build solutions on top of that. And that's really what this sentiment index is. It's thinking about the voice of all these people across the globe on Twitter 24/7, and then helping people understand what that conversation means and how does it impact stock performance in the future.
And on Friday, we discussed new advances in Alzheimer treatment and research. Let's take a look.
So there are a lot of advances in genetics. There are these very large tens to hundreds of thousands of people studies that tell us that there are probably 30 to 50 genes involved, each of them contributing a little bit to the risk. And that means that there's no single gene or gene test that you can do to tell you what your risk is. And the genetics eventually will tell us clues about how these proteins, for example, get to be in the brain. The other advances in research have to do with diagnosis. So we now have pretty good brain imaging tests called PET scans. They can tell us how much of these proteins are in the brain of an individual. But PET scans are expensive. They involve a little bit of radioactivity. So the field is moving to other tests. One of them is called a CSF test. That takes the fluid out of the back, the fluid that bathes the brain, and looks at the proteins in it. And where we're probably going to be in the next 2 to 3 years, we might guess, in blood tests. So what we want to have is blood tests that tell us how much amyloid or tau is in the brain. So diagnosis is a big direction. So there are two kinds of treatment research. One is what we call care research, and that's taking what we know now without major advances and making sure that it's widely used, because we know that if we diagnose you early, that if we implement certain treatment protocols, that you're going to do better in the long term. Maybe it's more activities, more structure in the care environment. Maybe it's a happier caregiver. So care research has advanced substantially compared to when I started 10 years ago. And the goal right now is to make it better and make sure that it's being used. The other big development is research that is trying to get rid of these proteins out of the brain, the amyloid and tau, and also address other causes. The field's made a lot of progress in amyloid. We're pretty good right now at removing amyloid from the brain. The challenge so far, though, is that that hasn't proven to actually help with symptoms. And it's a very controversial issue. We had a drug approved by the FDA earlier in 2021. It's called aducanumab. Aducanumab's pretty good at clearing these amyloid proteins from the brain, but doesn't seem to help symptoms, at least in people who have symptoms. So a long way to go with other medicines like it, and maybe delivering this drug a lot earlier before symptoms, so that the amyloid is removed before it has a chance of causing the symptoms. And for many people, I'm not telling them it's something they didn't know, because they've lived with it. And so, so part of the expectation is make sure people understand why we're making the diagnosis and what it means for the future. How fast is it going to progress? What can we predict about what's going to happen next? So that kind of education is very important. I think, though, the most helpful message is what I call a message of hope, which is this is not something that's going to, for most people, unfold overnight or even in a year or two. So it's an opportunity to set up a care environment that maximizes the situation for the patient and the family. So that's what we do in our center, is we stand by the caregiver and the patient, making sure that we optimize the situation at any point in time. We treat symptoms, we help them deal with crises. We make sure the caregiver experiences mastery. And probably, and this is maybe one thing I want to leave for you toward the end, one of the studies that we did years back in Utah suggested that if the caregiver feels close to the patient is going to do very well. And the difference between a caregiver not feeling close was as much as 2 or 3 years in difference of how long the patient lived. So a lot of what we do emphasizes that bond between patient and caregiver. Want it to be real strong, because a caregiver who feels very strongly towards the patient's going to do better. Which is why I tell all the guys, make sure you're nice to your wife, because most of the time, that's your wife who you want to feel close to you if you are unfortunate enough to have dementia.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN Weekly. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to, drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the news and information in retirement markets, technology, personal finance, so much more, all in one place. That's right, all in one place. Check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Want to see our latest content or search our archives? Visit our streaming partners at Roku, Amazon, and over 100 different streaming and smart TV platforms. We're back again tomorrow for BRN Sunday. I'll be joined by members of the media, academia, and financial services as we analyze the news for the week. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes. Now is your opportunity to co-create content around any topic on the First Lifestyle and Wellness Network. Reach a global audience through our platform and co-own exclusive branded content. All of our programs are available on demand and also as audio-only podcasts, so you can take us on the go. Broadcast Retirement Network, available anytime, anywhere, and on any device.
Are you being audited, and do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a tax doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.